Hello, it's Faye. Today I will outfit check and show you guys how I did this makeup. I have been on a recent journey of rediscovering my childhood, embracing that part of my life. And looking back, I realized how spiritually I have truly been blessed throughout my entire life. And I would like to share with you guys how I developed my witchy, pagan, woo-woo kind of way of thinking. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to be showing you my makeup tutorial of this look. So my spiritual journey starts when I was a child. I grew up in a spiritual center, not necessarily a church, but a spiritual center. It welcomes all religions, and it does have its core beliefs, which are mainly founded in love, self-love, open-mindedness, and appreciation for oneself. Rather than telling you what you can and can't do, my church encourages self-love and is based in affirmations, which are basically quotes that help people stay in line with themselves. It does discuss God and its beliefs, but it's more about spirit, which some may consider to be God, but overall just the divine energy of life itself. And since growing up in this church, I've come to realize that not everybody was raised in the same priorities that I was, which is in kindness, open-mindedness, social justice, and self-love. One of its other foundations or founding principles includes the fact that one's own brain is divine and creative in its own existence. One's thoughts are divine and creative and influential. We recognize the power of what we think of, where we put our energy. It also says that there is not really a differing power from God or spirit, whatever you may call it, which all comes together to kind of build a foundation of the belief in animism, which is the belief that all of Earth's creations are divine and sentient in their own way. My church also highly encourages the concept of social justice, which is something I am utterly grateful for, because most churches don't highlight the importance of the voices of the oppressed peoples. Also, something that definitely has stayed with me in my spiritual practice, but also my belief system in general. I am very politically inclined. I try to educate those who are a little confused or lost politically, and I don't know if hopefully I would be the same way without the spiritual center that developed my belief system, but I am utterly grateful for it, to say the least. This church, called the Center for Spiritual Awareness, has essentially developed my foundations in spiritual belief, in spiritual asceticism, because it encompasses and respects all religions and all paths to what we call God or spirit. There was also a metaphysical store in my church before we developed that room into a teen center, which we also do have church for children essentially, but it again focuses in self-empowerment and the belief that all children are examples of divinity. And I mean, we all are examples of divinity, in my opinion, along with my church's opinion. But I think especially this is true for children who are closer to the spiritual and I guess you would call it the other side, because they were closer to being born than adults are, since they're literally younger. It's the same with the elderly. They are closer to death, is really the nicest way I can say that. But children are closest to birth out of all the humans on this earth, as they were closer to being born, obviously. But I think something else that really stands out in my church is the respect for children that we have. And I feel like a lot of churches and people in general just don't even have a respect for children and their livelihood and their beliefs as little spiritual creatures, which is kind of makes sense as to why when I started growing older in middle school and high school, I identified as agnostic, because I didn't really think of anything spiritually. Just didn't think of God or spirit or divinity, as one would call it. I remember even at one point I identified as an atheist because I, like I said, did not think of anything spiritually or anything godlike. I think I was also very turned off by Christianity. As somebody who grew up in not Christianity, I was highly encouraged to question authority and Christianity, as my guardian at the time was also kind of put off by Christianity, which is so fair. I think if you're in progressive circles, you understand why most people are put off by Christianity, but especially as a bisexual woman, I grew up with a father telling me I was not allowed to like girls, and that came from what I understood to be his Catholicism, and I was very turned off from spirituality in general because I didn't see the possibilities of what it could be and what spiritual practices could be without the concept of a god, or even introducing a concept of multiple gods. We get to 2020, my graduation year. I like I said, did not really think of anything spiritually, but then I was gifted a single mystery box of the goddess Nyx, which was the theme of the mystery box, and I was thus introduced to the concept of multiple gods and goddesses. Around this time, I started to rediscover my spirituality, which led me to tarot. I was actually introduced into pagan circles with tarot, and I found a tarot deck in a horror convention, actually, and it was fairy themed. I still have that very first deck. I'm pretty sure it's from like Temu or something like that, unfortunately, but it's what introduced me to tarot, so I'm not too mad about that deck. And let me tell you, I studied that fairy deck of cards. I still have it today because I am in love with fairies. And also in 2020, maybe 2021, I discovered the Norse goddess Freyja, who is the Norse goddess associated with death, and she's associated with amber. But most of all, what attracted me to worshipping Freya was the fact that she is associated with cats. I would eventually name my cat after her, Freya. Can definitely say paganism changed my life. you could even say it saved my life, as I was going through a really crappy relationship that ended with a lot of drama and a lot of ended friendships. Through it all, I had Freya, who is a very empowering goddess. She's is also associated with love and birth, and is therefore really good to work with if you're looking for some more self-confidence in yourself. There have been multiple points in my life when all I had was that goddess Freya. So I'd like to take this time to thank dear goddess Freya for keeping me alive. And I say she saved my life because not only was she sometimes the only entity I feel like I could talk to, but also I was very much at my worst mentally, and dear goddess Freya is what introduced me to my new form of self-love that I practice today. How is that I took care of myself in dedication to Freya, and she returned my calls by giving me little signs here and there, and eventually she brought me my cat, who I named after her, Freya. I truly believe the goddess Freya brought me cat Freya, mainly because it was right after a really crappy breakup from an abusive relationship that I thankfully survived, and afterwards I was brought dear cat Freya. This was all a couple of years ago at this point, but it still affects me to this day, obviously, as somebody who is traumatized in childhood. My trauma tends to not want to go and to leave my body, but that's why I practice magic. I am very grateful for where I am today and everything that got me here. And here's the final witchy look of my makeup today. Thanks for watching, and I'll show you my outfit. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any more questions about what my spirituality looks like, I love talking about paganism and eccentric spirituality in general. So let me know if you have any wonders or thoughts or questions at all. On my social media is Your Fae Realm, and unless it's my Instagram, that is Your Fae Realm and Your Fae Princess. Bye!